Chosen one, there are moments in life when God begins removing people from your path, not because you failed, not because you were rejected, and not because you were unworthy, but because your spirit is entering a higher season that cannot carry certain energies with it. The separation you are experiencing with the J person is not random. Heaven saw something your emotions could not fully understand. God heard conversations you never heard. He saw intentions hidden behind smiles. He saw the spiritual weight this connection was placing on your destiny, and before the damage became permanent, he stepped in. What feels painful now is actually divine protection unfolding in slow motion, and the reason God is pulling you away is far more powerful than you realize. Chosen one, the hardest thing for a pure-hearted person is accepting that not everyone assigned themselves to your life because they loved you. Some people studied your light while secretly resenting it. Some people stayed close to monitor your growth, not celebrate it. The J person was one of those individuals who carried an unusual tension around your presence, because your spirit activated something inside them they could not control. Every time you started healing, they became distant. Every time you gained clarity, confusion suddenly appeared around you. Every time you became excited about your future, strange resistance entered your atmosphere. This was not coincidence. Spiritual warfare often hides itself inside relationships before it ever reveals itself openly. God began separating you because your next level requires peace, and the J person carried chaos disguised as familiarity. You kept trying to understand them logically while heaven was exposing them spiritually. You kept asking yourself why their energy changed so suddenly, why conversations felt heavy, why your intuition kept sounding alarms you tried to ignore. Deep inside, your spirit already knew this connection was becoming dangerous to your emotional and spiritual growth. But because your heart is loyal, you kept giving chances to someone who had already disconnected from your destiny long before the physical separation happened. Chosen one of the clearest signs God is removing someone from your life is when staying connected to them begins draining your confidence, your focus, and your peace. Notice how exhausted you became around the J person. Notice how your mind became crowded after dealing with them. Notice how your joy slowly decreased whenever they entered your space. People who are aligned with your purpose may challenge you, but they will never consistently weaken your spirit. The J person carried an assignment that conflicted with where God is taking you, and heaven could no longer allow unrestricted access to your energy. You thought you were fighting to save the relationship, but in reality God was fighting to save you. There were moments when you tried to reconnect, and somehow everything kept falling apart. Communication broke down, timing felt off, distance increased, misunderstandings multiplied, emotions became unstable. That was not simply human dysfunction. That was divine interruption. God will sometimes block access between you and someone because he knows what they would eventually destroy if they remained close to you. The separation itself became mercy, even though it felt like heartbreak. Chosen one, the J person may never fully admit what was happening internally. Some people cannot explain why they become intimidated by someone chosen by God. Your resilience bothered them. Your ability to survive difficult seasons bothered them. The favor over your life silently irritated something inside them, because your presence reminded them of the areas where they refused to heal. Instead of becoming inspired, they became uncomfortable. Instead of protecting your spirit, they competed with it in secret. And what hurt you the most was realizing that the very person you prayed for was also the person draining your spiritual strength. God saw you crying over someone who was becoming spiritually incompatible with your assignment. He saw how much effort you invested trying to preserve something that heaven had already decided to dismantle. Chosen one, when God removes someone, it is not always because they are evil. Sometimes they are simply unable to go where you are being called. Some people fit your old season, but cannot survive your transformation. The problem is that loyal hearts often confuse history with destiny. Just because someone was important in one chapter does not mean they belong in the next one. The J person was attached to a version of you that God is now destroying. They understood the wounded you, the doubting you, the struggling you, but they could not recognize the powerful version emerging from your pain. The moment your confidence started increasing, the relationship started shaking. The moment you began hearing God more clearly, tension increased. The moment you stopped begging for validation, distance appeared. Why? Because spiritually unhealthy connections often survive through imbalance. Once you started healing, the foundation of the relationship began collapsing. Chosen one, you were never meant to shrink your destiny to keep someone comfortable. God is separating you because your future is too important to be tied to someone who cannot celebrate your elevation. You are entering a season where clarity matters more than attachment. Your discernment is increasing. Your spirit is becoming more sensitive. You can now feel energy before words are spoken. You can sense hidden motives behind behavior. That is why certain people suddenly feel unfamiliar to you, even if you once loved them deeply. Your spirit has evolved beyond what your old emotional patterns could tolerate. The J person kept pulling you backward mentally. Even when you tried focusing on your purpose, their inconsistency distracted you. Even when blessings approached, emotional confusion followed. The enemy often sends distraction before breakthrough because confusion delays movement. But God is ending that cycle. The separation is creating room for your restoration. Heaven is removing emotional noise, so you can finally hear divine direction clearly. There is a reason your sleep changed around this situation, a reason your anxiety increased, a reason your intuition became louder. Your spirit was responding to misalignment before your mind could explain it. Chosen one, your body often detects spiritual danger before your emotions accept it. That constant heaviness you felt was not imaginary. God was warning you that the connection was becoming spiritually expensive. And still, you kept trying to fix it because your heart naturally searches for the good in people. But God is teaching you something powerful in this season. Not every person who enters your life deserves permanent access to your soul. Some people are lessons. Some are temporary assignments. Some are mirrors revealing wounds you still need to heal. The J person revealed how much you were overextending yourself emotionally. They revealed how often you ignored red flags to preserve emotional attachment. They revealed the parts of yourself that still feared letting go even when peace disappeared. Chosen one, God is not punishing you through this separation. He is repositioning you. There are blessings attached to your obedience in this season. There are doors waiting for the version of you that no longer chases unhealthy connections. There are opportunities waiting for the healed version of you. But you cannot carry emotional chains into the next chapter God prepared for you. The J person represented emotional stagnation disguised as emotional loyalty. Heaven saw that if the connection continued, your focus would continue splitting between your purpose and your pain. God is ending the cycle because your calling requires strength. You have spent too much time questioning your worth because of someone else's inconsistency. You spent too much energy trying to decode mixed signals when your spirit already knew the truth. Chosen one, People who truly value your presence do not repeatedly make you feel emotionally unsafe. They do not continuously disturb your peace while claiming to care about you. The confusion itself became the answer you were praying for. And now the separation is forcing you into a deeper awakening. You are beginning to realize that loneliness and isolation are not the same thing. Sometimes God isolates chosen people temporarily so they can recover their identity without outside interference. The J person occupied too much mental space in your life. Their presence became a distraction from your spiritual growth. You were watching them so closely that you stopped watching yourself. You became emotionally consumed by trying to understand their behavior instead of protecting your own energy. But heaven is shifting your attention back toward your assignment. Chosen one, there are people praying right now for the wisdom, resilience, and gifts you naturally carry. Yet the J person normalized your value until you started forgetting how rare your spirit truly is. Familiarity can become dangerous when it causes people to stop appreciating what God placed in front of them. The J person became too comfortable mishandling your loyalty, and eventually God stepped between both of you, because your heart had endured enough silent damage. The separation hurts because part of you still remembers the good moments. Part of you still remembers the potential. Part of you still hopes things could return to what they once were. But chosen one, God is not calling you backward. He is calling you upward. And elevation always requires separation from environments, habits, and people that no longer align with your divine direction. The J person may not understand why access to you suddenly changed. They may feel your distance. They may notice your silence. They may even attempt to return once they realize your energy is no longer available the way it once was. But something inside you is different now. Your discernment has matured. Your spirit has awakened. Your peace matters more than emotional chaos now. And once God opens the eyes of a chosen person, it becomes impossible to unsee what heaven revealed. You are finally understanding why every delay happened, why every interruption happened, why certain plans collapsed before they fully developed. God was preventing deeper heartbreak. He was protecting your destiny from emotional entanglements that would have slowed your growth for years. Sometimes divine protection looks like disappointment at first, because human emotions cannot immediately understand spiritual redirection. Chosen one, your future spouse, your future purpose, your future elevation, and your future peace cannot be built on unstable emotional foundations. God is removing what keeps disturbing your spirit, because where you are going requires emotional clarity, spiritual maturity, and complete alignment. The next season of your life cannot survive constant confusion, hidden resentment, emotional manipulation, and inconsistent energy. Heaven is cleansing your atmosphere before your breakthrough fully arrives. And the powerful reason behind this separation is becoming clearer every single day, because now you are starting to see who you become when their energy is no longer controlling your emotions. Your mind is becoming calmer. Your intuition is becoming stronger. Your confidence is returning. Your connection with God is becoming deeper. The fog is lifting from your spirit, and for the first time in a long time, you are beginning to recognize yourself again. Because the truth is, chosen one, the J person was not just distracting your emotions, they were distracting your destiny. Chosen one, the moment destiny becomes attached to your life, separation becomes unavoidable. There are people who can walk beside you during ordinary seasons, but when God prepares to elevate you spiritually, emotionally, and mentally, the atmosphere around you begins changing. The conversations change, your tolerance changes, your energy changes, and suddenly, The people who once felt comfortable around you begin reacting differently because your spirit is no longer vibrating at the same level. The J person noticed this shift before you did. They sensed you were becoming harder to control, harder to confuse, harder to emotionally manipulate, and that terrified the part of them that benefited from your uncertainty. That is why things became strange without explanation. One day they seemed supportive, and the next day distant. One moment they wanted closeness, and the next moment they acted cold. Chosen one, emotionally unstable behavior often comes from internal conflict. The J person was battling with the fact that they could feel your value, yet could not fully honor it. They could recognize your light, yet secretly struggle with what your light exposed inside them. Your growth confronted their stagnation. Your discipline confronted their inconsistency. Your spiritual awareness confronted the areas where they still operated in emotional darkness. God saw the hidden warfare taking place behind the scenes. You kept interpreting their behavior emotionally, but heaven interpreted it spiritually. That is why God kept creating distance between you. Sometimes separation happens gradually because God is giving your soul time to detach from what your heart became addicted to. Chosen one. Emotional attachment can become dangerous when it keeps you bonded to people who continuously interrupt your peace. The J person became a cycle. You experienced temporary highs followed by emotional crashes. Moments of hope followed by confusion. Moments of closeness followed by silence. This inconsistency slowly trained your nervous system to live in emotional instability. But God did not create you to survive chaos. He created you to walk in peace. The enemy knew that if your mind remained emotionally distracted, your focus would never fully align with your divine assignment. That is why certain people enter chosen people's lives carrying confusion instead of clarity. Their presence keeps you emotionally occupied, so you cannot fully pursue the purpose attached to your spirit. The J person became one of the biggest distractions in your season of preparation, and heaven finally decided enough was enough. Chosen one. There were moments when you blamed yourself for the separation. You replayed conversations in your head. You questioned whether you could have loved harder, communicated better, sacrificed more, or stayed quieter. But God wants you to understand something clearly. You cannot heal a connection that the other person secretly sabotages through their unresolved issues. You cannot force alignment where spiritual incompatibility exists. You cannot carry a relationship alone while the other person continuously creates emotional imbalance. And the painful truth is that the J person often understood exactly how deeply you cared. That is why their behavior affected you so strongly. They knew your loyalty. They knew your heart. They knew you would continue trying even after disappointment. Some people unconsciously rely on the kindness of chosen individuals because they know chosen people naturally forgive, naturally empathize, naturally overextend themselves emotionally. But eventually God intervenes because your compassion was never meant to become a doorway for repeated emotional damage. Chosen one. This separation is exposing your true value to yourself. For too long, you measured your worth through someone else's ability to recognize you. When they became distant, you questioned yourself. When they became inconsistent, you questioned yourself. When they withdrew emotionally, you questioned yourself. But God is breaking that pattern because your identity cannot remain dependent on another person's behavior. Your value existed before the J person entered your life, and it will continue long after this chapter closes completely. You are beginning to understand that real love does not constantly leave you emotionally exhausted. Real alignment does not repeatedly destroy your peace. Real spiritual connection does not keep your soul trapped in confusion. Chosen one, confusion is not your permanent state. Anxiety is not your permanent home. Emotional instability is not your destiny. God is restoring your clarity by removing what kept clouding your spirit. And that is why the separation had to happen. The J person became too connected to your emotions while remaining disconnected from your destiny. They wanted access to your energy without fully respecting your calling. They enjoyed your comfort, but struggled with your transformation. They preferred the version of you that doubted yourself, because that version required less accountability from them. But now God is awakening the powerful version of you, and awakened chosen people become impossible to manipulate through emotional inconsistency. Chosen one, there are spiritual attacks that do not arrive through enemies. They arrive through emotional attachments. The enemy understands that direct attacks often fail against protected individuals, so instead he sends distractions disguised as emotional connections. He sends people who consume your focus, people who drain your energy, people who create emotional cycles that keep you mentally exhausted. Why? Because exhaustion weakens discernment. Confusion delays movement. Emotional chaos clouds spiritual vision. But heaven is reclaiming your focus now. God is pulling your attention away from the J person because your assignment needs your full energy. There are dreams inside you waiting to be activated. There are opportunities approaching your life. There are doors opening spiritually and materially that require emotional maturity to maintain. And God knows you cannot fully receive what is coming while remaining tied to relationships that repeatedly destabilize your spirit. Chosen one, you are entering a season where discernment will protect you more than emotions. You can no longer ignore what your spirit feels simply because your heart wants to hold on. One of the biggest lessons God is teaching you through this separation is that emotional attachment should never override spiritual wisdom. The J person may have had moments of sincerity. They may have cared in certain ways. But care without alignment still creates damage when two spirits are moving in different directions. And deep down, you already felt the difference. You noticed how your energy shifted after interacting with them. You noticed how your peace disappeared during certain conversations. You noticed how your intuition kept warning you, even while your heart searched for reasons to stay. Chosen one, intuition is often God speaking softly before reality speaks loudly. The signs were there long before the separation fully unfolded. Heaven was trying to prepare your spirit for what your emotions resisted accepting. The powerful reason behind this separation is not just about protection. It is also about preparation. God is preparing you for environments where your spirit will finally be appreciated instead of tolerated. He is preparing you for relationships where reciprocity exists naturally instead of being forced. He is preparing you for connections where your presence brings peace instead of tension. The J person was teaching you what misalignment feels like so you would never settle for it again in future relationships. Chosen one, one day you will look back and realize this separation saved years of your life. Right now your emotions may still remember the attachment, but your future will thank God for the distance. Imagine how much energy you lost constantly trying to decode mixed signals. Imagine how much time disappeared worrying about someone whose actions continuously contradicted their words. Imagine how many opportunities your mind overlooked because your focus remained trapped inside emotional confusion. God is ending that cycle because your future cannot afford further delay. There is greatness attached to your next chapter. That is why warfare increased around your emotions. The enemy attacks what threatens his plans. Your growth threatens darkness. Your healing threatens darkness. Your awakening threatens darkness. The moment you started becoming spiritually stronger, certain relationships began collapsing because low vibrations cannot survive around elevated consciousness forever. The J-person represented a connection that was becoming incompatible with your evolution, and now God is removing the emotional chains attached to your old identity. Chosen one, you were never meant to beg for consistency from someone who truly values you. You were never meant to constantly question where you stand in someone's life. You were never meant to shrink your spirit to avoid making others uncomfortable. The J-person may have appreciated your loyalty, but they did not fully understand the weight of your calling. They interacted with you casually, while heaven marked you differently. That is why this season feels so spiritually intense. God is separating you from people, environments, and emotional habits that no longer match your future. And although separation feels painful in the moment, it often becomes the birthplace of transformation. Some of the strongest versions of chosen people are born after painful detachments. Why? Because separation forces awakening. It forces reflection. It forces growth. It forces you to rediscover your identity outside emotional dependency. Chosen one, there is a reason you suddenly feel the urge to protect your peace more aggressively. There is a reason solitude now feels safer than forced connection. There is a reason your tolerance for fake energy has decreased dramatically. Your spirit is evolving. You are no longer emotionally available for situations that continuously wound your soul. God is strengthening your boundaries because your future requires stronger discernment. The J-person may still think they can enter your life the same way they always have. But something has shifted permanently inside you now. Your spirit has seen too much. Your intuition has confirmed too much. Your peace has become too valuable. Chosen one, once God reveals the true spiritual cost of certain relationships, returning to old cycles becomes impossible without betraying yourself. And you are finally learning to stop betraying yourself for temporary emotional comfort. That lesson alone is changing your entire destiny, because every time you ignored your intuition to preserve the connection, you abandoned your inner wisdom. Every time you tolerated inconsistency, you taught yourself that your peace was negotiable. Every time you accepted emotional confusion, you normalized emotional instability. But God is breaking those patterns now, because your next season requires emotional discipline. Chosen one, there are people coming into your future who will recognize your value immediately. People who will not require endless explanations to understand your heart. People who will not treat your loyalty casually. People who will not trigger constant anxiety inside your spirit. But before those aligned connections arrive, God had to remove the counterfeit attachments, keeping your heart occupied. The J-person served a purpose in your journey, but they were never meant to become your destination. Sometimes people enter your life to expose wounds. Sometimes they reveal insecurities you still need to heal. Sometimes they trigger abandonment fears that God wants to free you from. And sometimes they become mirrors showing how much self-worth you still need to reclaim. The pain was real, but so was the lesson hidden inside it. Chosen one, God is teaching you that being chosen does not mean every relationship will survive your evolution. In fact, some relationships collapse specifically because you are evolving. Growth changes dynamics. Healing changes standards. Spiritual maturity changes attraction. The more aligned you become with your purpose, the more uncomfortable, unhealthy connections become around you. And that discomfort is not punishment. It is redirection. The J-person was connected to your old season, but heaven is preparing your new one. That is why certain doors are closing so firmly. God knows your heart would keep reopening cycles that your destiny has already outgrown. So he is making the separation undeniable. He is allowing silence to stretch longer. He is allowing distance to become permanent. He is allowing clarity to replace emotional fantasy. Because, chosen one, your future depends on your ability to finally release what God has already removed. And once you fully let go emotionally, you are going to discover how much strength, peace, wisdom, and power was waiting on the other side of this separation. Chosen one day the pain you felt over the J person will transform into gratitude, because you will finally understand what God protected you from. Right now you only see the separation, but heaven sees the destruction that was prevented. There were battles you never had to fight, because God removed you in time. There were betrayals that never fully unfolded, because God interrupted the connection before it could go deeper. Sometimes the greatest blessing is not what enters your life, but what God refuses to let stay. You spent so much time mourning the loss that you almost missed the miracle hidden inside the ending. The miracle was your awakening. The miracle was your restored discernment. The miracle was finally seeing yourself clearly again after spending so long emotionally consumed by someone else's instability. Chosen one, the J person was never stronger than your destiny. They were only a temporary distraction, standing in the path of your elevation. But what God has written over your life cannot be permanently delayed by any human being. That is why your spirit keeps rising no matter how much pain you survived. You were chosen to overcome emotional warfare. You were chosen to outgrow environments that tried to limit your power. You were chosen to discover your worth beyond validation, beyond attachment, beyond fear of losing people. The separation forced you to stop chasing what God was already removing. It forced you to stop romanticizing what continuously wounded your spirit. And most importantly, it forced you to return to yourself. Chosen one, never forget this truth. When God removes someone, he also restores something. He restores clarity. He restores peace. He restores self-respect. He restores focus. He restores spiritual strength. The distance between you and the J person created room for your soul to breathe again. And now you can finally hear the voice of God louder than the noise of emotional confusion. The version of you emerging from this season is wiser, stronger, more discerning, more spiritually aware. You no longer ignore red flags just because your heart feels attached. You no longer sacrifice your peace to maintain unstable connections. You no longer beg for consistency from people who are unwilling to grow. God used this experience to teach you the power of discernment, boundaries, and self-worth. And because of that lesson, your future relationships will be different. The next people entering your life will encounter a healed version of you, a version that understands its value, a version that protects its energy, a version that chooses alignment over emotional addiction. Chosen one, your standards are changing because your spirit is changing. You are no longer available for confusion disguised as love. The J person was a chapter, not the entire story. And now the chapter is closing because heaven refuses to let your destiny remain chained to a connection that no longer serves your growth. God is leading you toward greater peace, greater purpose, greater love, and greater alignment. What feels like loss today will soon reveal itself as divine redirection. The tears, the confusion, the sleepless nights, and the emotional battles were all shaping you into someone stronger than before. So do not fear the separation anymore. Walk forward, knowing that God never removes something valuable without preparing something greater. Trust that every closed door is making space for the right ones to open. Trust that your spirit was never designed to remain trapped in emotional cycles forever. Trust that your destiny is still unfolding exactly as heaven intended, because chosen